It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I think that the reality is we need to recognise and understand that our kids are human and they're going to get it wrong just like we do.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with my wife, Kylie. I'm the founder of happyfamilies.com.au and the author of 6 books about raising happy families. And Kylie, we're the parents to 6 children, 6 baby girls. I've got a question for you. I'm a little bit confused about something that happened just recently in our family. I'm trying to work out if I'm a good parent or not. Got a phone call from one of the kids and she said, Dad, I left my iPad on the charger. And if I don't have it at school today, I can't submit my assignment. And if I don't submit my assignment, I might fail and I don't want to fail. And can you please bring me my iPad to school? And I'm trying to work out, is that good parenting that I did it or is that bad parenting? Because kids have got to learn to be responsible for themselves.
Well, I guess that depends whether I'm a good parent or a bad parent, because I had to take Miss 10 to Officeworks this morning because she needed a piece of cardboard. And she couldn't go to school without that piece of cardboard.
So while I was running iPads to one school, you were taking another child to Officeworks. What is it with kids? Why can they not remember stuff and tell us about it the day before? I mean,
it only becomes urgent when it's urgent.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question. Good parent or bad parent? Because I feel like I get a gold star. I feel like I've been a good parent if I look after my children and save them from the emergencies that they've created.
Look, I feel like there's another podcast episode in this.
That's
question.
A cop-out. I just want to know if but isn't it? It's this tension. We'll have to talk about it later. But there's this tension where you want your children to learn to be responsible, and therefore that might mean facing the consequences of their decisions from time to time. But at the same time, when they really need something, you kind of just have to go and help them, right?
Look, I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a second, but I have had numerous phone calls in our time together where you may have left a suitcase behind or...
I can't believe you just did that.
Let's talk about laptop cords and chargers that have been left behind, and I might have had to do a number of runs to either the airport or...
You've probably posted things to me or something.
I've gone down the coast a few times because you desperately needed something. So I think that the reality is we need to recognise and understand that our kids are human and they're going to get it wrong just like we do.
I'm really grateful that you said that. It's a beautiful point. Something that I remember reading in a book by Chaim Ginott, I think it was, who's one of the best writers on parenting ever to walk the planet. And Ginott says, if a friend, a neighbour comes to visit and when they leave the house, they leave their umbrella behind because it was raining when they arrived. If they leave their umbrella behind because it's cleared up, you don't chase them out the door and say, for goodness sakes, how hard is it to remember your umbrella? I mean, gosh, you're an adult. For crying out loud, I would have thought that I shouldn't need to remind you about these sorts of things. And if we wouldn't do it to our neighbours or our friends, we probably shouldn't do it to our kids. And you've just put me right in there. Well done. But we both went and looked after our kids. So I'm going to say that's a gold star for us and we are good parents. But we've still got to have the conversation with our children about helping them to not make that mistake too often. Is that reasonable?
Look, the reality is some days we just can't do it. And that's part of the story as well. But today we were able to.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is I'll Do Better Tomorrow. The purpose of today's podcast is for us to reflect on the way that we could learn from the week that's just been. And that wasn't actually what we were supposed to be talking about. We've both had reflections this week, things that we've learned about being a parent, things that we might do better next week with or better tomorrow with because of the experiences that we've had. That's what Fridays are all about. So I think that I might share my I'll Do Better Tomorrow first today, and then because your ones are always better. Your ones always make people cry and make people go, oh, Kylie's just the best mum ever. So I'm going to share mine first. Is that okay?
You're hilarious.
The other night, you had a meeting on, and because you had that meeting, I had to take all of the children to music lessons, but only 2 of them were actually having music lessons.
I'm not pulling the violins out because for the last 2 weeks, I've had to do exactly the same thing because you've left me
I've been away. I've been working. I know. So I piled 5 children into the car, and one of them really didn't want to get in the car at all. So we've driven down the street. Then I've realised that she didn't have her seatbelt on. She was so obstinate in her refusal and so vocal in her, I hate this and this is unfair, all that carry on, that she refused to put a seatbelt on. So I stopped after about, 800 metres getting down the road when I realised that was the case. And I thought, I've got this moment now where I've got to try and get it all right. So I did something that we haven't had to do for ages. I got out of the car, I opened the door, I asked her to get out of the car with me, and I walked her over to the footpath. I stood her on the footpath, And then I knelt down in front of her. I gave her a great big hug. And I said to her, you are just having the worst afternoon. And you wish so much that you did not have to go to music lessons while your sisters are there. And she looked at me and, man, she was so cranky. She was pushing back. She was like, I don't even want to hug. I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to hug me, but I know you don't want to be there. And something happened really soon, really quickly. It took about 30 seconds and she calmed down. She knew that I got it. She knew that I was taking it serious enough that we'd pulled the car over to talk about it. Meantime, we're running late for music lessons and I'm thinking, oh, for goodness sakes, I don't have time for this. But after about 30 seconds, she got into the car, she put her seatbelt on, she stopped crying, and we drove happily to music lessons. I just felt like when we talk about I'll do better tomorrow, every now and again we get it right. And I just think that maybe as parents we could be a little more patient, a little bit more understanding. There's still a certain demand placed on the kids. They've got to get back in the car and we've got to go to music lessons. But when we do it with compassion and kindness, we just get better results.
I love that story.
Can I tell you what happened later? Because it kind of went downhill from there. Once I dropped the two kids off to their different music lessons, which are obviously in the same building at the same time, I said to the other kids that were in the car, let's go to the park. There's a park around the corner. I drove them to the park. When it was time to leave the park, same child wouldn't leave the park. I'm getting attacked by mosquitoes. It's dark. You know, the night has fallen and she's running away from me in the park and hiding in places where I can't reach her without climbing into or over or on top of the children's playground. I wasn't quite as patient that time. I mean, I didn't do anything horrible, but I had to kind of tackle her and carry her screaming and kicking to the car and non-consensually put her in the car and put her seatbelt on and say, we're going, because there was two kids waiting at the end of their music lessons. So it was a win and a loss, but I think it's a great...
Maybe you should have left it at the first story.
I know, I felt like such a good parent. I don't know why I just spoiled it. But I think that's the reality of parenting, right? You have these good moments and then you have these terrible moments, just moments later where you think, oh my goodness, it's so hard.
I really love how, Fridays we don't actually even prep this together. We don't know what each other's going to share, and my story really supports your story today. So let's talk about that after the break.
Family life is pretty tough going sometimes. Most days are a struggle between strong-willed children and frazzled parents, but it can be better. The 21 Days to a Happier Family program is designed for busy parents who want a calmer, happier family. And it can be done with evidence-based strategies and practices that really work in 21 days. All resources are available for your family for 21 Days to a Happier Family at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today is Friday. It's our favourite day of the week. We get to share our insights from the things that we've learnt through the week in our parenting journey.
Quick question before we talk about your I'll Do Better Tomorrow moment. What's the take-home message from mine? Is it that when the children are not behaving that we sometimes just need to wrestle them into the car? Or is it when the children are not behaving we sometimes need to stop the car and hug them? Or both?
I'm going to suggest let's collect the gold flecks. Let's celebrate the wins because there are plenty of not wins.
Yeah.
We're going to lose along the way, but let's focus on those wins.
I got to admit, it did feel good. When I got it right, it did feel good. And when I got it wrong an hour later, it really felt bad. And I thought to myself, how hard is it to get it right consistently, even when you're the expert? Anyway, what's your I'll Do Better Tomorrow?
I realised the other day, I've actually now officially read 4 of your 6 books. I'm getting there.
Yes, you are.
I'm getting there. One of the things that jumped out at me was literally just this tiny little line in the book which said, autonomy supportive parenting is hard work. It's hard work.
And the book is 9 Ways to a Resilient Child. It's I think it's the third book that I wrote, and it's all about resilience. And it's one of the best-selling books about kids and resilience in the country over the last few years.
So many times as a parent, I feel like I must be getting it wrong because this is just so hard. And just like your experience with one of our children the other night, you get it right and then within 5 or 10 minutes or an hour later, you've got it wrong again. And it just feels like you're hitting your head against a brick wall all the time. And I was so grateful that I just read that one little line because it kind of just put everything into perspective again and helped me to remember that this job that we do, we call parenting, is not easy for any of us. And it doesn't matter what's in our toolkit, it's still hard. And we've got this full toolkit and we know the things that we should do, and yet it is still just hard work. And so as I kind of just lived into that moment, it was an opportunity for me to just take a step back, give myself a pat on the back and say, you know what? You're doing a great job. This is hard, but it's supposed to be hard. And as we involve our children in that parenting process, and as we let them be a part of their destiny, so to speak, their lives, they get to be in charge of it in some way, we're going to come up against hard things. But that's part of the process. We're helping them to become the people that we want them to be and that they want to become. And that requires effort.
What I've also noticed is that when we are doing parenting right, it is really, really hard because children have ways of being that are not consistent with how we want them to be being. When we get it consistently right, though, it gets easier. Even when the times are tough, they are easier than if we are not stepping up, if we are being overly controlling, if we're not being warm and kind and compassionate. There's something extraordinary that comes from being kind and caring, but also being really clear about what those limits are and letting the children know that there are certain expectations. And I think that's really at the essence of what autonomy supportive parenting, which is, I think, the gold standard in terms of parenting styles. When we look at the idea of authoritative parenting, which is widely spruiked as the gold standard, what authoritative parenting really is number one, supportiveness and warmth and nurture, combined with demandingness and limits and structure, along with autonomy support. This is the way that the very best parenting textbooks have described the very best parenting since the 1950s, 1960s, and now here we are in the 2020s, and the rules haven't changed. The parenting science hasn't changed. And that's, I think that's a really great insight. So your take-home message after mine is it's easy and then it's hard, and so long as we're doing the best, we're going to make mistakes. But let's take the gold flex. What's your take-home message?
I think for me, it's just the acknowledgement that sometimes things are going to be hard. Family life is messy, but that if we are striving to be the support that our children need to be, that we're doing the best we can, and we just need to take a step back, give ourselves a pat on the back and move forward.
Yeah, just because it's hard doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Sometimes it actually means the opposite. You're doing it absolutely right. Hey, we really hope that you enjoy the podcast. If you do, please jump onto Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave ratings and reviews so that people can find out about the podcast. The more ratings and reviews there are, the more people that get to find out about the podcast, and the happier people's families become. We really appreciate the work of Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, who produces the Happy Families podcast. Our executive producer is Craig Bruce. If you'd like more info about making your family happier, whether it's joining in with the Happy Families membership, or, I don't know, just getting more support for making your family happier, you can get all the info you need at happyfamilies.com.au.